Hey guys, just to let you know, I usually read creepypastas translated into Japanese for Japanese people and learners, but this time I will read Japanese creepy and scary stories in English. For foreign audience, I will continue to read many scary stories from Japan, so please subscribe and hit the good button. I hope you all enjoy it. When I was a kid, my parents often told us, close the curtains when it gets dark. I think many people had this habit ingrained in them. Even without being constantly reminded, it becomes natural to close them. However, I would like to share a cautionary tale. In high school, on one of my days off, I spent the whole day playing video games in my room. Before I knew it, I had fallen asleep, and it was already dark outside. Oh, I have to close the curtains. As I hastily thought this and looked toward the window, at that very moment something blatantly out of the ordinary stopped me in my tracks, just outside the window. There was a woman with long black hair and a pure white face, dressed all in white, looking into my room. Although I perceived her as a woman based on her appearance, looking back, I can't be sure of her gender. Regardless, it was a person. I was paralyzed with fear, and in the face of this unexpected event, the woman with a human face suddenly opened her mouth wide and screamed. Reflexively, I stumbled out of the room and, falling down the stairs, sought my mother's help in the kitchen on the first floor.
What are you doing? Are you okay?
My panicked mom came over and I yelled, "There's a person at the window, God damn it!" or something like that. In the midst of the panic, I don't remember exactly what I said. My mom was more worried about me falling down the stairs, which fortunately resulted in only minor bruises. Once I calmed down, we checked the room together, but of course there was no one outside the window. My mother hadn't heard the loud scream either.
Were you dreaming while asleep?
My mother suggested, and I'd like to think so. However, I vividly remember the appearance of that person. I can't believe a living person would go on another person's roof just for this, especially dressed like that. You often see actors on TV playing ghosts with their faces painted white, but when I see that, the fear comes back, and I can't stop the cold sweats and heart palpitations. Since then, I make sure to close the curtains before it gets dark. I also began to feel an abnormal fear of gaps, especially in curtains. Even in the morning, I don't open the curtains directly in front of me. I open them from the side. If you leave the curtains open when it's dark, not only ghosts but also living people might look in. That's scary too. It may seem trivial, but experiencing fear could cause me to carry it on my level for a lifetime, so I thought I'd share my story. The Running Woman. This is a story from my college days. I started living on my own to go to college. The apartment was a 4-story building with about 20 units on each floor. It was a relatively spacious studio apartment that could accommodate about 80 households. It wasn't exclusively for students. The residents ranged from students like me to professionals and couples. Although it was a 4-story building, there was no elevator. Instead, there were staircases at the two ends of the building, one leading to the main entrance and the other leading to areas such as the bicycle parking lot. Being alone for the first time was a challenge at first, but within a month I got used to cooking for myself, and things generally went smoothly. I got to know some of the other residents and exchanged greetings, such as good morning or good evening, when I walked by in the morning or in the evening. My room was at the end of the 4th floor, the farthest from the main entrance. The stairs to the bicycle parking area were right next to it. The room had one window, but it was frosted glass, so there was no view out. The window could be opened slightly, allowing a limited view. Basically, it wasn't a high-end apartment with a high rent. Another student from the same department lived on the first floor. Although we weren't particularly close, we had a conversation like, "Oh, I live in room 40 prong. I'm in room 10. If you ever need help, feel free to ask." And that was about the extent of our interaction. Around mid-June, I returned from my part-time job at an izakaya, had dinner, and it was a little before midnight. Since I had classes the next day, I decided to go to bed. I turned off the light and went to bed as usual. About 5 minutes later, I heard someone running down the hall. Well, it was an old building, and occasionally people would make noise or be a bit rowdy, so I thought, it's a bit noisy, and tried to ignore it. However, the sound of someone running in the hallway continued. It seemed like someone was running back and forth in front of my room, dashing one way and then the other. Increasingly irritated, I decided to open the door and confront whoever it was. The moment I opened the door, I regretted what I had done. Standing in the hallway was a middle-aged woman, about 5 feet tall, wearing a red skirt carrying an umbrella inside the building, and wearing dirty sneakers. She was running at an incredible speed. As soon as I opened the door, she stopped running, grinned at me, and started walking toward me. Of course, I closed the door, locked it, and used the chain. That's when I realized that if she had run like that, someone on the same floor, like an elderly person, would have yelled at her. But maybe everyone knew about her. Then the doorknob began to jiggle. I thought I had to call the police. But when I went to the back of the room, the rattling stopped. After a while of silence, I thought maybe she had given up and left. But the next moment, I saw the silhouette of a woman against the frosted glass window, and what looked like a hand was reaching in and out through the small open window. I immediately ran to the entrance, unlocked the chain and the door, and this time I rushed down to the first floor. I rang the doorbell of a fellow student in the same department and asked to be let in. When I told him about my recent experience, he suggested that he call for help and brought 3 of his friends. They arrived in about 10 minutes and we went to my room together. There was no sign of any disturbance in the room. While discussing who the intruder might have been, one of the newcomers noticed the small window and asked, "Did she get in through here?" I confirmed, yes, but upon closer inspection it was a 4th floor room at the end with no outside platforms or ledges, just a window on a plain wall. Without some kind of suspension, like wires, it wouldn't be possible to see a silhouette from the outside. Perplexed, we looked at the small window and found a muddy, handprint-like mark. That same day, I borrowed a scooter and went back to my parents' house to cancel the lease on the apartment. That concludes my experience. There's no moral or conclusion, just a story from a 4-story apartment south of O Prefecture. My friend accidentally pressed the call button on the remote control of the tankless water heater. This is a frightening experience that my friend from the same university had during our college days. One night, my friend rushed into my apartment with a pale face, as if he had seen a ghost. When I asked him what had happened, he collapsed on the floor of my room and told me this terrifying story. While he was taking a bath, he tried to press the reheat button, but he accidentally pressed the call button that allowed communication with the living room. At that moment, he heard a woman's voice coming from the remote control of the water heater.
"Hang on, I'll be right there."
He lives in a decent rented apartment, also lives alone because his hometown is a small town like mine, and he doesn't have a partner. As he wondered whose voice it might be, a shiver ran down his spine, and he couldn't stop shaking. Afraid to stay in the bath, but reluctant to leave it, so he quickly dressed and fled the apartment as if on the run. "Wait, did you see a woman in your room?" I asked, and my friend whispered,
I don't know. I was too scared, so without looking around, I went straight to the apartment door, but the door was securely locked and the chain was in place. When I got back from college, I checked everything. I'm sure I locked the door, no doubt about it. I swear to God.
he said, shaking. In the end, I let my friend stay the night, and we nervously drank the alcohol we had in the fridge without turning off the lights, trying to calm down. Eventually, my friend returned home, and it seemed that his parents had come to pick up his belongings from the apartment. He hasn't been in touch since then, so I don't know what happened to him after that. Since I heard this story, that's why I've been extra careful not to press the call button while taking a bath, and I pay close attention.